All right. So today we will be making homemade strawberry shortcakes. So the first thing that we are going to want to do is preheat our oven to 450 degrees. So if everyone can take a second just to do that before we get started cooking, or I guess baking today, we can say 450. So once everyone has your ovens preheated, give me a big thumbs up and we will start working on our strawberries. I see a bunch already. That's great. Okay, perfect. So the first thing we are going to work on is getting our strawberries cut up. So there's a few different ways that you can cut your strawberries depending on how you want the texture to be. So no matter what, we're going to remove our leaves. So the first step is going to be to take your leaves off. If you would like, you can take a small slice of the top off just to get rid of that extra stem area here. You don't have to. I probably will just to make sure it's gone. And then you have a few options here. You can either cut them in half or you can slice them up depending on how big they are or your preference of how big you'd like them to be. This one's a little bit bigger, this one's a little bit smaller. So I think I'm going to do a mix of slicing and just cutting in half just for a little bit of texture. So if we're going to slice our strawberry, we're just going to start at one end and make slices down each side. So we have some nice slices like this. You can make them as thick or as thin as you want. You don't want them to be super thin because then they may end up getting too mushy. And we're going to do that with about a quarter of the strawberries. So we're using one whole container of strawberries and we're going to guess around a quarter of them we're going to slice up. So for this one, I'm just going to cut this one in half since it's a little bit smaller. So I'm going to take my leaves off. Cut the top off quick. And then this one, I'm just going to cut right down the middle. So I have two halves. And then once I cut my strawberries, I'm putting them into a small bowl off to the side. So again, this one's a little bit bigger. So I'm going to slice this one. And I'm just going to start at one end, making sure to keep my fingers away from the knife. And just make slices all the way down the strawberry. So I have all of these. So we are actually going to cut up the whole container of strawberries. I misspoke on that, but then we're only going to crush about a quarter of them. So we're going to work our way through our whole strawberry container. If you want to follow what I'm doing, I'm pretty much going to slice all of my bigger strawberries and then cut my smaller strawberries in half. But otherwise, it's pretty much just up to you guys and what your preference is. We're going to put all our strawberries into this one bowl, and then we'll remove what we have to for the next steps. So see, like this one's really, really small. So this is definitely a good one just to cut in half. And you can see I'm also using a bit of a smaller knife. When you have something small like this, strawberries are on the smaller side in the grand scheme of fruits and vegetables. It's much easier to keep control of your knife when it's smaller, when you're using a smaller product. So that's a good thing to do as well. Everyone looks like they're doing a really good job getting their strawberries cut up. This is most of the chopping that we'll have to do today. So this is probably one of the harder parts. For any of those that are just joining us, we have preheated our ovens to 450 degrees. And we are just working on chopping up our strawberries now. I had explained if you want to follow what I'm doing, I'm pretty much cutting my smaller strawberries in half, and any of my bigger strawberries I am slicing up. But it is completely up to your preference. And I'm almost through my container. Got a few left. If you have any icky ends, like you can see mine here, it's just a little bit icky. I'm just slicing that off so I can still use the rest of the strawberry. All right. Okay, so you can see here, I have all of my strawberries in a bowl, some sliced, some halved. How is everyone doing? Are we still working on cutting? I see a few thumbs up. Is anyone still working? If you are, I can hold on a second and we can continue in a few minutes, but it looks like everyone's good. Okay, great. So now what we're gonna do is we're just gonna take another smaller size bowl and we're gonna remove about a quarter of these strawberries. So you can eyeball it. It doesn't need to be exact. We just don't want to take too much. So I'm just going to take like 2 spoonfuls out of here. I feel like that looks like a pretty good amount. Maybe I'll add 2 more. So we're going to set the big bowl aside and we're going to work with our smaller bowl here. You can use for this, I'm going to use a fork. You can use a fork. You can use any sort of like mashing tool. And what you want to do is just gently crush the strawberries so that you can see some of the juices start to come out. So you don't want to make it into a strawberry paste. You don't want to mash it too crazy. You just want to put a little bit of oomph into it so that you see some juices flowing. We don't want our strawberries to look completely mangled. They're still going to look somewhat intact, but there's just going to be a little bit of juice in the bowl as well. So you see, I'm just gently using my fork to press the strawberries against the side of the bowl, and that's releasing some of those juices. So I'm just going to do a few more. Like I said, we don't want our strawberries to turn to mush. We want them to stay intact. A few small pieces might break off. That's okay. But just so that we have some liquid in the bowl as well. We're starting to break them down a little bit. So you can see I have some smaller pieces, but there's also juice within the strawberries as well. So that's what we want that to look like. All right, I think I'm all set. So once you have your strawberries mashed, give a thumbs up and we will go on to the next step. I see 2 already. That's great. Everyone's doing a great job. Thank you, Enrique. All right, does anyone need any more time to mash, or are we all good? All right, looks like we're all good. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna take those strawberries that we just crushed and just put them right back into the bowl with the other strawberries. So now all our strawberries are gonna be in the same bowl. We can get rid of this smaller bowl. And then to this, we're gonna add a 1/4 cup of sugar. So I'm gonna take my 1/4 cup measuring cup. And I'm gonna do a 1/4 cup of sugar. Normally I would use a knife to level it, but because it doesn't have to be completely exact, I'm kind of just shaking off the excess into the bag until the cup looks pretty level. And then I'm just gonna add that right into my strawberries. We're just gonna want to give this a good mix. You just want to mix it till it's fully incorporated and you don't see any more of those bright white spots from the sugar. All right, so that looks incorporated pretty well. And now all we're gonna do is leave this alone. So I'm just gonna put this to the side to let all of that soak together. And it's gonna create almost like a syrupy texture with those strawberries. I'm just gonna take a sec to clean up my space as well, get any strawberry juice out of the way. And when everyone is all set, their strawberries are set aside, give me another thumbs up and we'll go on to the next step. Oscar, I see you. Kristen, I see you. Everyone's doing great. Ella, all right. So now we're going to get started working on our dough for the shortcake part. So the first thing that we're going to tackle is our butter. So we have 3/4 cup or 1.5 sticks of butter. We're going to want to cut those into small cubes. So we have our 1/2 stick of butter first. I'll demonstrate this first. So I have my stick of butter here. What I'm gonna do first is make a slice right down the middle. So I'm gonna take my knife, put it in the middle, and just slice right down. So now I have 2 halves, right? And then I'm gonna do the same thing to each of those 2 halves. So I'm gonna slice right down the middle of 1/2 and right down the middle of the other half, which gives me 4 little sticks. And then these sticks, we're just going to turn around to the side and we're going to cut those into cubes. So I'm just going to go down and cut cubes right across. So this is like the perfect size cube of what you would want to get. Not too big, not too small. It'll be easy to break down. So I can do that again with the rest of my butter. And remember, we're doing this with 1.5 sticks. My sticks are all in half sizes. So that's why I have 3 sticks of butter here. So again, I'm going down the middle, which gives me my 2 halves. I'm going down the middle of each half, which gives me 4 sticks. I'm taking those sticks, turning them around, and then I'm cutting those cubes just like that. And then I'm pushing those cubes just to the side on my cutting board for now. We don't want to put them in a bowl just yet, unless you have a separate bowl, then that's okay. Now I'm doing this one last time, down the middle. And be careful, the butter tends to stick to the knife. So when you get it off, just make sure you're being very careful with your fingers. I have my 4 sticks. Turn those sticks to the side and cut my cubes. All right. So now I have my big pile of butter cubes here, as you can see. I'm just going to wash my hands off quick. In total, that was 1.5 sticks of butter. All right, and now I'm going to set my butter aside. Once everyone has finished cutting your 1.5 sticks of butter, just shoot me a thumbs up and we'll go on to the next step. All right, I see Ella. I see Enrique. I see Oscar. Thank you. You guys are doing fantastic. And if you have some butter on your hands, just make sure you wash that off so they're not too slippery. I see a few people still working. Take your time. All right, how is everyone doing? Does anyone need a little more time? If so, just let me know. Okay, I see everyone shaking their heads. I think we're all good. Okay, so we're gonna start working on our dry ingredients for the shortcake dough. So the first thing that we're gonna wanna measure out is 4 cups of flour. So I'm gonna get my flour out here. And what I'm gonna do, just to make it a little bit easier, is just pour a bunch of flour into this bowl and measure it from here. You do not have to do that, but that just makes it a little bit easier for me with my flour container. And this time I am going to level when I measure. So I'm taking my 1 cup measurement. I'm scooping some flour in and I'm shaking it so that it doesn't get stuck in there. And then I'm going to use the back of a butter knife, a non-sharp knife. And I'm going to run it over the top. So then that way it's even. And I know I have a cup in there. So once I do that, I'm going to take that and dump that into my big bowl. And now I'm going to do that 3 more times because we need 4 cups in total. So I'm scooping, shaking, leveling, and then putting that into the bowl. 2. 1 more. This one I'm gonna pour a little bit. Wow, I measured a pretty good amount. All right. All right, so now I have 4 cups of flour in this bowl here. I'm going to save anything that fell onto my counter to flour later because we're going to need a floured surface. And then is everyone good on their flour? Have we measured it all? Okay, I see everyone thumbs up. Great job. So now we're going to add to that 3 tablespoons of sugar. So we're going to do the same thing. I'm going to take my tablespoon measurement. I'm going to stick it in my sugar bag. I'm going to use the back of my knife to level again and dump it in. So we're going to do that 3 times. Two. And 3. And then just give me another thumbs up when everyone's added their sugar in. All right, I see everyone. Okay, great job. Now we're going to do a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. So I have my big salt container here. I'm just going to screw off the top so that I can scoop it right in there. So I'm going to go for my 1/4 teaspoon measurement. This is really small, so you could also just eyeball it with a pinch. But if you prefer to measure it, that's totally fine. So I throw that in there. And then we have 1 more ingredient left. Everyone good on the salt? Awesome. Okay, so now we're just going to do 5 teaspoons of baking powder. So I'm going to grab my teaspoon measurement here, this size. And we're just going to do the same thing again. We're going to level it to make sure that we're not adding too much. All right.
Hey, Sophia, what are we doing again with the baking powder?
We're putting it right into that same bowl that has our flour, our sugar, and our salt. And it's
How
5
many?
teaspoons.
How many?
5.
5 teaspoons?
Right. You got it.
All right, thank you very much. So
Make sure
we're
it's the
5,
teaspoon
right?
and not the tablespoon. So you want the one that has the T, the S, and the P, not the B.
Which little one? How? I have no idea. I don't understand. What are we doing again?
You're going to look for the spoon that has the TSP on it.
I got it. TSP.
Perfect. Great job. And remember, you're going to do 5 of those, okay?
This one?
Yep, that one.
The one that says 1/8?
No, it's going to say 1.
1?
See, do you see mine?
Okay.
Let me show you mine. So it just, I don't know if you can read it, actually. It's a little hard. But mine has a big 1 here, and then it says teaspoon.
1, okay.
All right, I got it. Now what are we going to do for these?
5.
Yes, you got it. Thank you.
Perfect. And then we can just give our dry ingredients a little bit of a mix just to make sure they're all combined. I just usually use the knife that I used to level and just kind of give it a little stir just to make sure everything is combined in there. Doesn't need to be perfect, but just so that it's a little mixed is all.
We got it.
Great job, Enrique.
So now what's next?
All right, so is everyone have all your dry ingredients in the bowl? Perfect. Okay, so now our hands are going to get a little messy. So what we're going to do is we're going to add our butter cubes that we cut up and put them into our bowl of dry ingredients. So I'm going to dump these in. And then this is the part where our hands are going to get a little dirty. We're going to want to take our fingers and we're going to want to rub the butter into the dry ingredients. We want to make those butter cubes smaller. So I'm taking the cubes and smushing them into my hands into the dry mix. So this way we're going to have butter mixed throughout and not just cubes. So I'm kind of grabbing it, smushing it, and then doing it back in. And if you don't want your hands to get dirty, you can always wear gloves for this too. Or if you don't want to use your hands, you could try using a fork, or if you have a pastry cutter, you can use a pastry cutter. That works really well too, whatever you are most comfortable with. And this takes a little bit of time, but you'll see once we get towards the end, we're going to have really small pieces of butter. And then that way, like I had mentioned earlier, there's butter throughout our dough. So it's evenly spread. So again, I'm just kind of digging my hands in and grabbing a handful and just kind of smushing as I go. And then doing that all over again. And you'll see once the butter's spread enough, once you squish, it kind of creates its own, the dough starting to form. So we're just going to keep doing that until we see small specks of butter throughout. And you can tell from the size of those clumps. So right now, you can see I still have some big clumps of butter, right? You can see those over here. So I'm not done just yet, but otherwise it's kind of small. So we're getting there. So we just want no more big clumps. That is our goal. And you can feel the texture of the flour start to change as well. Once you get to that point, I am almost there. I have a few more big clumps left. So I'm going to single those out and make sure that those are broken up. All right, I think I'm pretty good. So you can see there's a lot of these smaller pieces. It doesn't look like flour anymore. You can tell that there's kind of butter spread throughout. So that's the texture that we're going for. It looks like a thicker flour almost. And if you, like I said, if you squeeze it together, it'll stay compact, but then once you go like this, it'll fall apart. So that's exactly what we're going for texture wise. All right, so this is good. I'm going to wash my hands really quick. All right, how is everyone doing? Do we all have our flour all set? I see Shaniqua, I see Oscar. I see a few people still working. Take your time. And we're almost ready to make this into a dough. Another thing you want to make sure before we keep going is that you have a good area of counter space, because we are going to have to roll this dough out. So you want to make sure you have some counter space that's clean so that you can use that to roll your dough out onto. Does anyone need any more time, or are we all set? If you do, just let me know. All right, it looks like we're all good. So then the next thing we're going to do before we start kneading this is we're going to add 1 1/4 cup of heavy cream. So I'm going to take my heavy cream. And I'm going to measure 1 1/4 cup. So I'm going to do 1 cup first. Pour that right in. And then another 1/4 cup. Just make sure you have all of that. And then we can just take a spoon just to mix, start to mix that to get it to begin to form a dough. We want to make sure all that liquid is combined. And once you see no more liquid, that's a good time to stop, and then we can get ready to knead it. All right. So this is the part now where we're going to need our counter space. Does everyone have all their heavy cream added? I see a few people still working on that. All right, so what we're going to want to do, we're going to make sure we have a good amount of flour on our counter and on your hands too. That way, less of the dough will stick to your hands. If it does stick, that's not the end of the world, but you do want to try and make sure you don't get a lot stuck to the counter. So I'm going to take some flour and I'm going to spread it out onto my counter here. And then I can take some of that excess. I'm going to rub my hands in it so that I get it all over my hands. And then we can just take our dough and plop it on. It's still going to be a little grainy, so just be careful, because kneading is what will really bring this dough together specifically. So you want to use your hands and kind of bring it together. You want to continually bring it all into one spot and kind of work through it. So I'm going to push everything to the middle and then push down. I'm just going to keep doing that until it starts to form. It's going to take a little bit of time, but you can see there's starting to be less and less crumbs that are separating. And if you do still have some crumbs separating, even after we've done this for a few minutes, you can always add a touch more cream and see if that helps bind it as well. And I think I'm going to do that. So I'm just going to make a little hole in the center so the cream doesn't spill everywhere. I'm just going to pour a little bit in there. And then just continue to knead. That should help. So now that my dough is pretty much kind of joined in, the way that I'm going to finish kneading is I'm going to grab my ends and I'm going to push them up and in. Yeah, that touch of cream definitely helped a little bit. So if your dough was looking like mine and there was still a good amount of pieces separating, if you add that touch of cream, that should definitely help. Because now mine is almost, there's a few pieces that are separating, but that's okay. This kind of dough is always going to be a little bit like that, so that's totally fine. But for the most part, it's sticking together, and that's exactly what we need. Do this for another minute or so, and that should be perfect. You see now there's not really much separating at all. So it takes a little bit of time, but you get there eventually. Now that mine's kind of in a ball, I'm just kind of rolling the ball around and pushing it down. And once yours start to form a ball and you don't really have any pieces separating, that's when you know you're at a good point. Right. Okay. How is everyone's dough looking? I see a few thumbs up already. Almost still working. That's okay. It's going to take a little bit of time. If you do happen to be done already, you just want to make sure that you still have a good amount of flour. You see mine, when I was kneading, mine kind of took up all of the flour. So I'm just going to take a little more flour and spread it onto my surface just to make sure nothing sticks. Everyone's doing great. How's our dough looking? Do we still need a little more time? If we do, that's totally fine. That looks great, Enrique. Good job. I see some people still working, but it looks like it's coming together. Ella, I see your thumbs up. Kristen, I see you. Great. Shaniqua, I see you. Thank you. Caitlin, I see you're all set. Oscar, how you doing? You need more time? Are you good? You're good? Okay. So now we're going to start rolling our dough out. If you have a rolling pin, you can use a rolling pin. If not, you can use something like a wine bottle or an olive oil bottle, anything circular. And we want to make sure we do have a little bit of flour on our rolling pin as well. So I'm just going to take some and put it on here too. We're just going to start rolling. We want to make sure that we're rolling in both directions so that we have our dough at an equal thickness everywhere. I know on the recipe sheet, it says to roll it to about 2 inches thick, but after we tested the recipe, we said it was a little bit better for cooking time to roll it a little bit thinner than 2 inches. So I'm just going to keep rolling in all directions. And I'm going to get my ruler. All right. So we don't want it too thin. We don't want it too thick. So I would say if you go for like 1 inch, that's probably fine. This is probably even a little bit less than that. That's okay, because they will rise a lot. So I have a good sized circle right now. So I'm going to do this like this. So I see I have everything into a nice circle. How is everyone's rolling going? I see everyone hard at work. Good job. And once you guys are done with rolling, just shoot me a thumbs up. We'll start cutting some biscuits out and keep rolling. I see a few. Awesome. I see a few people still rolling. Take your time. I saw Ella. I see Enrique. I see some rolling still going on. Great. How is everyone doing over here? We almost ready? We need more time again. I see mostly thumbs up. Okay, great. So now we're going to start cutting some of these out. So you want something that's close to 3 inches. I have this juice glass here that's 3 inches across. So I'm going to use this because I don't have a cookie cutter that size. And what I'm going to do is we want to make sure we have an even amount. So I'm just going to take this juice glass. I'm going to rub it in the flour on the counter first, just so that it doesn't stick. And I'm just going to put that in there and press down. And I'm just going to keep doing that across my dough. Until I've cut as many circles as possible. All right. So I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I got 8 out of my first batch. So now I'm just gonna remove all that extra dough. Stick that to the side for a second. And then I'm gonna just I'm gonna take my circles and place those off to the side for now. And it doesn't really matter exactly how many circles you get. It probably will differ a little bit depending on how thick or thin everyone's dough is, but as long as you have an even number, that's what we want. So now I have the rest of this dough here, and I'm just going to do the same thing that we just did. I'm going to roll that out again to about the same thickness and then cut some more circles. And we're just going to keep doing that until we have no more dough left. So I'm just rolling this out again. I'm going to grab one of my circles in a sec to compare, just to make sure that I'm getting the same thickness. You want to try and make sure you get them as close to the thickness as you did before, just so that everything cooks about the same. So this is a little thinner, so I'm just going to scrunch this up together. Flip it over, and then that should be good. So now that I have my dough rolled out again, I'm just going to do the same thing. Just going to cut some more circles. We're just going to keep doing this until we have no more dough left to use. I think I have 12 circles right now. And one thing that I am doing to make sure that I end up with an even number of biscuits is that every time I'm cutting them out, I'm only going to cut out an even number. Even if it looks like I could fit one more, just to make sure I have that exact even number, I'm just going to do that. So I'm going to do 2 out of this one. And if anything starts to stick, you can always add a little bit more flour. All right, so I ended up with 18 circles total and just this little bit of dough left. But again, like I said, you do not need to have the exact same amount. As long as you have an even number. The even number is what is important. How is everyone doing? All right, I see some people are done. I see some people are still working a little bit. So we'll give a few more minutes. If you are done in the meantime, you could clean up your surface a little bit. That's what I'm gonna do, just so I don't have any more flour flying anywhere. And if you are done as well, you want to make sure you have your lined pan ready. So I have a pan lined with parchment paper all set for when we put these into the oven. So if you are all done, you can start getting that ready if you haven't already. And we will go on in just a few minutes. Just want to make sure everyone is caught up. One thing I wanted to mention for this recipe too is you could pretty much interchange strawberries for any kind of fruit. So if there's a fruit that you like so much better than strawberries, you could do the exact same thing that we did to the strawberries with a different kind of fruit and make a different kind of shortcake as well. Because most fruits will react the same way that the strawberries did. So that is also another option. How are we all doing? Are we all ready to go on to the next step? All right, I see we still need a little more time, so I'm going to wait another few minutes. Again, for anyone who is done, you can make sure that you have your sheet pan lined and ready. I'm using parchment paper. You could use parchment, you could use tin foil, anything. Just make sure it's non-stick and that it is oven safe. All right, you guys are all good? Perfect. Okay, so the next thing we're gonna do just before we get these biscuits into the oven is we have a remaining half cup of butter, so 1 stick of butter. We just want that to be melted because we're gonna brush that onto the biscuits before we put them in the oven. So I'm just gonna unwrap my butter. I'm gonna cut it up a little bit just because that helps it melt a little bit quicker, but not in any specific fashion really, just to make it into some smaller pieces. I'm just kind of cutting it into slices. So we're melting 1 stick of butter. I'm gonna do that in the microwave at 30-second intervals until it's fully melted.
You said a half a stick of butter or 1 stick?
A whole stick, yeah.
Okay.
Whole stick. That plays to 30 miles.
So after every 30 seconds, I'm just kind of stir it around. If your butter's been out too, it'll melt a little quicker. Like mine's already got a good amount of liquid in there. So I'm just gonna stir it a little bit and then I'll put it back in. This might only take a whole minute. But just until we've got liquid. And then you want to make sure that our pan is right in front of us as well. For once we start to stack. All right, my butter is all set. When everyone has melted butter, just give me a thumbs up and we will go on and start stacking. I see a bunch already. If anyone needs more time, please let me know. But it looks like we're almost all good. If you have a pastry brush, we can use one of those. Looks like a paintbrush, but it's made for food. If you don't have one of those, you can use a spoon, whatever you guys have available to you. Are we all set? Okay, so whatever number of biscuits you have in total, you want to divide that by 2. So for example, I have 18 biscuits in total. So I want to put 9 biscuits onto my tray. And I want to make sure that they're spread out. So I'm laying them out. I'm going to do 3 rows of 3. So I have them spread all evenly just like this. Once you have your layer of biscuits, shoot me a thumbs up. We'll go on. I see some already. Great job. All right, and then once you have your first layer of biscuits like this, you can take either your pastry brush or your spoon, and we're just going to brush each with a little bit of butter. So I'm just dipping and brushing around. And then once all of your biscuits are covered in butter, give me one more thumbs up. I see a bunch. We're all doing a great job today. I know this recipe is a little long, but we're almost there. All right, so then once you have all your butter on your biscuits, you should have the same number of biscuits remaining off the tray. So I still have 9 biscuits off to my side. So what I'm gonna do is just take the rest of those 9 biscuits and stack them right on top of the ones that we have laid out. So then we should end up, or I will end up with 9 biscuits on my tray, 2 on top of each. So there's 9 stacks of 2. So however many you have is however many stacks of 2 that you want. So now I have all my stacks of 2. So once you have all your biscuits stacked, give me one more thumbs up. All right, it looks like everyone's good. So we can go ahead and put these in the oven. So we're gonna make sure we use our oven mitts because that oven is super, super hot at 450 degrees. You have a question?
Yes, do we put any butter on top of those biscuits?
No, from right now, we're just gonna leave them, but when we take them out, we're gonna do a little more butter after they're
Okay.
cooked.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, so we're gonna take our biscuits with our oven mitts and we're gonna put those into the oven. And we're gonna set a timer for 10 minutes. It might take a little bit longer, but after 10 minutes, we're at least going to check them and see how they're doing. And if we need a little more time, we can always add a little more time. So I'm just gonna take a sec to wipe everything down. And you're gonna wanna have a medium-sized bowl ready. So you're gonna need a medium-sized bowl, and then if you have a hand mixer, you can use a hand mixer. If you have a stand mixer, you can use a stand mixer. You can also just use a whisk. That might get a little tiring, but you can always switch off between people, but whatever you guys have available to you. All right, so once everyone is ready to get started on this whipped cream, just shoot me one more thumbs up. We're in the home stretch.
Wait, hold on a second, Sophia. So after we put them in the oven, what are we gonna do next?
So did you set a 10-minute timer?
Yes, but now
Okay,
what?
great. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna work on the whipped cream. So you wanna make sure you have a bowl and you have some sort of mixer that you can use to make the whipped cream, okay?
Okay, yes, you got it. Thank you so much.
Of course.
All right, see you.
All right, so to make our whipped cream, it's very, very simple. We're going to need 1 1/3 cup of cream. I don't think I have that much, so I'm just going to use whatever I have left because this was the only cream I got. Let's see. I have just about 1 cup, so
Wait, hold on. So what are we doing again, Sophia?
you're going to measure 1 1/3 cup of heavy cream. So you're gonna do 1 cup, and then you're gonna do 3/4 of a cup of heavy cream, and you're gonna pour that into your bowl. So I'm just taking my cream, pouring it into the bowl. Once everyone has their cream in the bowl, give me a thumbs up and we can get started. Everyone looks like we're doing well. I'm warning you, it's gonna get a little loud, so I might mute myself for a second just so that I'm not hurting anyone's ears. But whatever mixer you're using, if you're using a hand mixer like I am, if you're using a stand mixer, you're gonna wanna use it on high. And you want it until it's just thick. So I'll keep showing you the texture of mine, just so that we can make sure that you guys are getting the right texture. If you're using your hand and a whisk, you're just gonna want to do it as fast as you can. And like I said, if you are doing that, your arm might start to get a little tired. So you can always either take a break or switch off with someone, whatever works. But I'm going to put my hand mixer on high speed. So as you can see, with it on high speed, I'm just moving it around to make sure that the whisks are getting all areas of the cream.
All right, so Sophia, right now we got 1 1/3 cup of heavy cream in there. So what are we gonna do next?
So now you're gonna use your mixer and you're gonna start whisking it. What kind of mixer are you using?
This.
Okay, so you're gonna whisk it really as fast as you can without spilling. So you wanna make sure that you don't spill anything over the sides of the bowl. So here,
Thank you. You got it.
I'm gonna get a whisk and I'm gonna show you what you wanna do, okay?
Oh, no, wait, hold on.
Oh, do you have a hand mixer?
Dad got it.
Okay,
Dad's got it.
perfect.
Hold
So
on, Dad's got it.
Enrique,
Dad's got it. Dad actually got it.
Enrique,
What?
you're gonna wanna use that hand mixer that your dad found on high speed, okay?
Yes, you got it.
Perfect.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, so my cream is almost there. It's thickening, but it's not just thick enough yet. So I'm gonna do it a little bit. All right, so now you can see I've reached a pretty good consistency. I can scoop it with a spoon and it will stay. So that's exactly what you're looking for. When you are using one of the hand mixers or a stand mixer, It's gonna take a while at first, and then once it starts to thicken, it happens pretty quickly. So you just wanna make sure that you keep your eye on it so it doesn't get over whipped. Because that is something that happens from time to time. And then I see my oven has 2 minutes left on our biscuits. And they look like they're rising pretty well. Once everyone has their cream whipped to the right consistency, just let me know. We're gonna add a little bit of vanilla to it. So once you have that whipped, you can add that 1/4 teaspoon of vanilla. And then you can just whip it a little more to mix that in. So I'm adding mine in right now. And then I'm just gonna whisk it one more time to make sure it's all
How much
combined.
vanilla was that?
1/4 teaspoon. I have my vanilla mixed in. I'm just gonna give it a little taste. And now this particular recipe doesn't have sugar in it because the strawberries are pretty sweet, but if you want the whipped cream to be sweeter, you can add a tablespoon or 2 of sugar. And I just had my timer go off, so I'm going to check on my biscuit. I'm gonna pull them out of the oven for a sec, and I want to make sure that they are cooked fully through. So I'm gonna take them out. You can see they are a little bit brown on the top, which is what we're looking for. But what I'm gonna do is just carefully lift one of the tops to make sure that underneath they're pretty cooked. And yeah, it looks like it's still a little underdone in between the two. So what I'm gonna do is put them back into the oven. And I'm gonna set a timer for 2 more minutes. And then after that, we'll check again. If you lift up your biscuits and you see that there's still a little bit of raw dough in the middle, that's when you're gonna wanna add more time. If they look like they're fully cooked, then you're all set and you can take them out of the oven. And in the meantime, I am going to add a little bit of sugar to my whipped cream. I'm not gonna do too much because I don't want it to be really sweet. I'm just gonna add a teaspoon. And then I'm just gonna mix that one more time just to incorporate the sugar. All right, that was perfect. I did a teaspoon of sugar and that made it the perfect amount of sweetness for my liking. Not super sweet, but it's not completely not sweet. So if you do want to add a little bit, but not too much, I would suggest a teaspoon. And then I have about 30 seconds left for my biscuits. You want to make sure you have your strawberries handy and your butter handy. along with your whipped cream, of course. All right, so I'm going to take these out again and check one more time. Marie, I can send a link to the online recipe for you, okay? I'm going to put it in the chat right after I take these biscuits out of the oven. All right, so you can see they got a little more golden. I'm just going to carefully lift one of them again to see how the middle looks. The middle still looks a little underdone, so I'm going to add them back in for a few more minutes. I'm going to do 3 minutes just so that we've got it 5 total, and those 15 minutes should be good enough. I'm going to add the link to the recipe sheet if anyone needs that. So the good thing about this recipe is that because all of your components are separate, you can always make them whenever you'd like. You don't have to make all of them now because they're going to get a little bit soggy once you make them. So you want to make them fresh. So if you want to eat one now, you can eat one and then leave the rest for another time when you want to eat them. You're just going to want to store everything separately. All right, and here is the document. All right, I just sent the link to the document for anyone who needs it. Just make sure to let me know that you guys can see it. And then that way you can save it to your computer, you can print it. All right, and my oven's almost done. So for the purpose of saving the ingredients, like I just talked about, I'm going to demonstrate making one of them. And then after class, you guys can go on to make however many you'd like. Storage wise, you're going to want to store the biscuits in a airtight container. You could keep them in the fridge or on the counter, whatever works best for you. But for the strawberries and the whipped cream, you're going to want to definitely keep those in the refrigerator. All right. I'm gonna check this one more time. I think we should be good now. Okay, yeah, mine are cooked now. So I'm going to carefully, very carefully remove one from my heat pan just so I can show you guys how you will build one. If yours are still too hot, I don't want you to burn yourself, so you can just watch. But if they came out a little while ago and they're not super hot anymore, then you are good to go. All right, so I have one stack of 2 biscuits in front of me. Let me just find my recipe sheets. Okay, so the first thing that I'm gonna do is I'm gonna carefully pull the 2 rounds apart. I'm gonna take a little bit more of that melted butter. I'm gonna brush it on the inside of this one and the inside of the other one. And this is also completely optional. If you don't want to put more butter on it, you certainly don't have to. So then to layer, we're going to do the biscuit bottom. And then I'm gonna get some of our strawberries. As you can see, these really formed a liquid. So they have more of like a syrup now. And you see some of them are mashed, some of them are whole. So we have those different textures going on as well. So I'm just gonna take 1 spoon of the strawberries and put them on top of that biscuit. And then we're gonna take some whipped cream and put that right on top of those strawberries. Just like that. Then we're gonna do the same thing all over again. So I'm gonna take the top half of my biscuit, put that right on top. Do 1 more scoop of strawberries. And 1 more scoop of whipped cream. Mine's falling a little bit, but that's okay. And then just to make it look a little pretty, I'm gonna take some of that juice from the strawberries and drizzle that over the top. So then you have your nice strawberry shortcake stack. If anyone else is building one right now, I'd love to see what they look like. But if they're still too hot, that's totally fine. I don't want you to burn it. Oh, that looks great, Oscar. That looks so good. So yeah, if yours are still too hot, just give it a few minutes for them to cool down so that your fingers aren't burnt. Oh, Kristen, that looks amazing. Awesome job. And before we go today, does anyone have any questions at all about the recipe? About storage, about any of the steps? If you do, please let me know. I'm happy to answer any questions. All right, it looks like we're all good. If for anyone who does have a shortcake, if you want to stay in the picture, and for anyone who doesn't, if you want to stay in the picture too, I'd love to get a picture of everyone from today, just because I love to see all of my participants from class. So if you guys want to get ready to take a photo, you can hold up your shortcake or you can just be there yourself, whatever you want, but I'm going to take it quick. All right. I'm going to give you a countdown. 3. Oh my God. Oh, hold on. I have to get a better holding of my mouse. All right, ready? 3, 2, 1. Amazing. Thank you guys. Like I said, we're going to have another class in August. That will be on the 20th. We're going to be making barbecue or we're going to be making shrimp tacos for that one. So keep an eye out for emails to sign up for that. I'll be teaching that class again as well. If there are no other questions, I hope everyone enjoys your Sunday. Thank you so much for cooking with me. I love cooking with you guys. I'll see you next time, okay? Have a good day. Bye, everyone.
All right. Bye, Sophia. Bye,
Bye.
Caitlin. Bye, Ella.